for a special lunch and learn. Feel free to move chairs around as you see fit, because I know some people, if you don't want to sit with your back to it, don't worry, it's casual. Put the chair where you need it to be. And I should probably start with saying, hi, I'm Jennifer Burnett. I'm an outreach coordinator here at the Castle Museum. And since I handle programming, I get to do fun things like this and be with you all for those. And in light of that, I want to announce what's coming up. We have, actually, I don't know where my brain is. I had a punchki, and now I'm coming down. And I don't know, like there's sugar, but now I'm tired. It's a mess. Sorry. Okay, so I do want to tell you the reason we're in here today in this beautiful exhibit that we just opened recently. It does make a lovely backdrop, but the real reason is because we just had the floors refinished in the morning room, and they are gorgeous, and we're keeping people off of them for a few more days, letting them cure a little harder. So our next lunch and learn will be back in the morning room like normal, but it's beautiful and just an example of ways that we're taking care of this building and keeping it in its best light all the time. So we'll get to enjoy that soon. So programming that is coming up next Wednesday, February 21st. We have a midweek matinee. This is when we get out some popcorn and show you a documentary that might be of interest. And this time we have Delta Public Media, Sawdust, and Chancy Boys. Totally free. Drop in, bring your own beverage, but we'll have like popcorn and some water and stuff. But if you like, pop and things like that, I don't know, there are too many choices. I'm not going to pick for you. We do have, for Intergenerational Crowd this Saturday, February 17th, we have Hands-On History. That's just a drop-in program where our education coordinator gets things out that you can touch and explore hands-on, like I said. Come on in, there's some chairs over here and a couple more over here. Kitchen gadgets, old-fashioned kitchen gadgets will be on Saturday, so that'll be fun. Good for all ages. And then our next lunch and learn, remember lunch and learns are second and fourth Tuesdays always. So February 27th at noon, we will have Jerry Dillon sharing his Beatles collection. And I'm really excited about this because those of you who are Beatles buffs would know that February 2024 is the 60th anniversary of the Beatles coming and playing on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Mm.
That's exciting, yeah. So we're super excited about that. Before we introduce Sandy and kick off, Mark has a question for the crowd.
Does anyone remember the name of the meat market on the corner of Brockway and Gratiot? It came to the point. It laid recently, the light before it was torn down and turned into a parking lot. It was a pawn store, pawn shop, which is now moved into the bank, the empty bank.
Pawn shop still there.
Well, it moved to the bank. It's now a parking lot because there's a provisioning store there. Right, exactly, same neighborhood. But where somebody just asked me before I came here and said, "Do you remember the name of the meat market?" And so,
Oh, it's a fun game. When it pops into your head, just shout it
Shout
out.
out.
Yes, that's perfectly. It's kind of like bingo, okay?
throwing it out to the crowd.
You never know. Crowdsourcing can work.
That's right.
All right. Well, today it's my pleasure to welcome our very own Chief Curator, Sandy Schwan, who's been with the Historical Society Castle Museum for over 20 years. How many years?
It's 31.
31. Oh my gosh. Okay, so 31. So Sandy is...
She doesn't look any older.
Thank you. You get the gold star, Mark.
started when she was 5 years old.
Exactly. I've learned a lot since then.
Sandy manages our entire collection, which you don't always get to see, which is why every now and then we're doing these special snacks and artifacts versions of Lunch and Learn so that we can bring things out of the collection that we can't always have on display for whatever reason. You only, when you visit the museum, even as we do temporary things and change it out, you only see a small fraction of everything that Sandy is responsible for making sure that we preserve and care for over the years, so that we have this wonderful record of our past and our collective stories. So thank you, Sandy, for being willing to come and bring some artifacts out of the collection. And I'm just going to hand it over because you're listening to me, right?
All right.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you. So welcome, everyone. It's just great to see everyone. Yeah, this was, so when Jen, she goes, is it okay if we do it in Centennial Hall? And I'm like, oh yeah, what a great backdrop. And if you guys get bored with me, you just look at the pictures. It's really good. But I hope you will enjoy. One of my favorite jobs, my job is, people always ask me, they said, Sandy, what is your favorite part of your job? And it is truly the people I get to meet and the stories they share with me. And so when we started looking for a story, and in particular, Jen said, hey, Sandy, we're looking for a story, a Snacks and Artifacts. Do you have something that would pertain to Black History Month? And and we have the Goodrich brothers, and everyone here is familiar with them. And I'm a photo person. I love photos. That is my go-to artifacts that I really love, because with the exception of having a time machine, that's the best way for me to feel like I've stepped back in time, is to see some of these amazing photographs and see what they say. So that's also what's really cool about being in this space right now, is if you look at the books over back by where Jen is after the talk, you'll see that these pictures are actually from a little souvenir book that was no bigger than this, and stuff. And so to have them in this format, you really get a sense of the grandeur of the buildings and what Saginaw was really like. And this story kind of ties into that too. It's like these pictures predate that, but it shows how vibrant this community, it was and continues to be. And we're constantly reinventing it ourselves, which is really cool. I've been down here 31 years, and I've seen how Saginaw is really starting to reinvent itself. And I'm really excited about the things. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's continuing to evolve and to make some exciting new changes come along. But we're here today to talk about the past, and like I said, part of my job is, my primary job is to care for the objects in our collection, but also to acquire new ones for the museum, because it is through those artifacts that we tell the history of Saginaw County. That is why we collect those things. And one of the first things that I always ask people, in particular, if an artifact isn't necessarily in your face, very obvious that it has a connection to Saginaw County, I always ask people to tell me its story. Tell me what makes it significant to Saginaw County. And so that's one of the things I said I always like to start out with. I think of history and artifacts as like puzzle pieces. We do not have, how many of you like to do puzzles? All right, so we got some people that like, how many of you ever done a puzzle and you got all the way done and realized you're missing about 3 pieces? Been there, done that, and you looked everywhere, underneath the couch, underneath the sofa, checked the cat, can't find those puzzle pieces. And most of the time, those pictures, it's like, it's okay sometimes if we don't have those pieces, because most of the time we can pretty much tell what the picture and story looks like. But sometimes, if all those pieces were from a pond, and suddenly within that pond, if you looked at it, and you didn't know that you're missing a duck that was on that pond. It's like you'd missed out that story that there was actually a duck that had landed on that pond. You'd see the water, but you wouldn't see the duck. And so that's why as we continue to acquire more and more artifacts, because we want to fill in more and more of those pieces, because Saginaw, like I said, Saginaw County has a very rich and diverse and vibrant history. And as we acquire each piece, we're able to tell more and more of that story. And lots of times, one artifact or a couple artifacts will lead us down a new direction. And that's what's really exciting about this collection that we have here today, is exactly that, the very rich story. Some artifacts, as I said, are self-explanatory. This one, if this would have just come in on its own, I would have taken this picture. If we knew nothing about this photograph, I would have taken it. And the reason why I would have taken it is because there's obviously a connection to Saginaw. It says Saginaw in it. We can tell from this picture that they are wearing baseball uniforms. There's bats there, so we know that. From the car, we can probably date it. If we actually do some research on the name on the umbrellas that are up there, one of the things we can actually do too is kind of say, okay, we can probably figure out roughly about the time period. And, we're like looking, it's like obviously a park setting. There's lots of different uniforms, so maybe it was some kind of tournament or something going on. So we can get some ideas a little bit about it. So we would have acquired this artifact for that purpose. This artifact, on the other hand, definitely has a lot that you can see. So some of it has a lot more detail to tell us. You can see that it is a team jacket for the Saginaw Products Corporation. You can also see from the sleeve that it was a manager's jacket. And when we turn it around, we know that the team that was playing was actually a baseball team. And not only was it a baseball team, but they were the city champions in 1944. So again, if that is all that I knew, and sometimes we get artifacts in, and that's all that the person knows. They found it somewhere, they acquired it from somebody else, but they really don't know too much about it. That is what the information is. However, with these pieces, we know a lot more. But there's still a lot of pieces to the story that are missing. These pieces, and I am excited to share, the person that actually donated these was able to make it today. Thank you for the weather for holding off. So she was able to come up from Detroit, but the Honorable Marilyn Atkins. These pieces that you're going to be seeing today and we're going to be talking about were owned by her grandfather. So the person that we're speaking about today is her grandfather. And one of the things, when I reached out to her and I was telling her about this talk, I said, hey, do you want to do the talk? And I said, we can tag team this together. And she said, Sandy, I gave you all the information that I know. And I said, okay, well, we'll see what we can find out, and we want to fill in. And that is our job, not only when we do exhibits, but when we're trying to do research. And the exciting thing for me is that as I started doing the research to do this presentation, there's wonderful more and more stories that, thanks to these wonderful artifacts, we're hopefully going to be able to tell. We're getting very excited about some of the different things. So the person that we're here to talk about today is William A. Collins. And I love this. This is a quote from the Saginaw News, one of Saginaw's most ardent baseball fans. And what's really, really telling about this is that this quote is actually from an article, not his obituary, an article that announced his death in 1946. That tells me that this gentleman had made an impact in Saginaw. You don't just, if something happens to me, they're just going to have a little footnote in there. This man made an impact in Saginaw. And one of the neat things is, when you listen to his background and his story, he wasn't a banker, he wasn't a lawyer, he wasn't a doctor. He was an average person, but he had a passion and a desire to play baseball and to share baseball with the community and share baseball with Saginaw County. And that is the story that we're here to learn about today. So a little bit more about him. So William Collins was actually born in Danville, Indiana, in 1880. We're not sure what brought him to Saginaw, where his love of baseball even came from, how often he played the game. We know that he met his wife and they married in Toledo, Ohio. And we're not even sure what brought them to Saginaw. So the rest of the story that we know is the story that pertains to his life here in Saginaw County. So it's one of those things where, we're still trying to find. Those are some of those pieces that maybe we'll find along the way. We first see William, we see him appear in the 1909 City Directory in Saginaw. Both him and his wife are living actually just down the street down here. They are living on Hoyt, very close to St. Mary's Cathedral. They live in a little house right there. And he is a chauffeur, and she is a hairdresser. Over the years, some of the occupations that he will have will include not only janitor for a couple of plants, which will very much tie into his baseball career here in Saginaw County, but he also was a superintendent for the Commodore Apartments at one point, as well as there was reference in his daughter. They had one child, and she had a great impact as well in Saginaw County. But one of the things that she did in her obituary, it listed him as having had a barber. Well, we know that his wife was also a hairdresser, so I have to believe that maybe at some point, she got really busy, or the guy said, hey, wait a minute, can you cut my hair? And so he probably helped out with that as well. So there's a wonderful stories, but like I said, they were living down here on Hoyt. When he passed away, they were living on South 11th Street. They were also a member of the Catholic Church, and he is actually buried in Mount Olivet. He passed away at the age of 65 after a sudden illness in 1946. But I want to start out with the first record that we have. One of the things that we knew is from some of the pictures that we had gotten in this collection was about this team called the Saginaw Tigers. And it's really one of those things, I don't know how many of you have ever done research, or however many of you have done research, either genealogical research or family research, but one of the things is with the Tigers. Tigers everywhere. At the time that the Saginaw Tigers were playing, there was the Saginaw Tigers, there was the Frankenmuth Tigers, there was the Buena Vista Tigers, and there was also the Detroit Tigers. So when you said Tigers, pick one. So Tigers everywhere. It also depended on what season you were in, because in 1895, in November of 1895, the Saginaw Tigers were actually the football team. By the spring of 96, they were the baseball team. So I don't know if they just changed balls and seasons or what, but we had Saginaw Tigers. So Saginaw Tigers have been around for a long time. And the last record I actually saw of a baseball team being referred to as the Saginaw Tigers was actually in 2005. So there was a team around for quite some time. But the Saginaw Tigers that we're going to talk about is William Cullen's Saginaw Tigers. And again, I want to bring attention to something. As I was working with William, he is of Black and Indigenous descent, and it was really interesting to think about how his life was and what brought him here, and the exciting story and how his baseball career unfolded here in Saginaw. But one of the things that's really interesting in both the Saginaw News as well as in the city directories, it's what's in a name. And you will see his name spelled with a U, with an O, with an I, with an E, with and without an S. But it's all the same person. It's all the same person. It's just how they represent it. And as I was looking through this, and between the Tigers and the names of his spelling, I thought, wow, it was such a fun, challenging research project. But I thought, and as I watched his career unfold here in Saginaw, I thought, yes, that is the same thing that he was going through. He must have had a very fun, but at times very challenging career. The 1912, prior to this, a lot of their Saginaw Tigers team, you see them, they kind of drop out of sight. We start picking them back up in about 1906, 1907 is when they're starting to play games. And I love the newspaper headings on it. Basically, the newspaper headings were using their baseball games as want-ads. We're looking for a team to play. And if you're interested, please call or write to this location. And so we're seeing evidence of that. Initially, it was anyone 16 years old or younger. Now we want to play a team, the next year it was we want to play a team 17 years old or younger. Then we were up to 19 years old and younger. We had that going on. 1911, it seems like they're trying to get a little bit more organized. And it's not until 1912 that at the beginning of the season in April that we actually seen the first reference to William Collins. He is actually saying that the Tigers are under the management, again, and you'll see his name is spelled a little bit different. Here it's spelled with an E instead of the I, but he is now managing or coaching the Saginaw Tigers team. And so they're really excited. They're talking that they want new games and things, and please come to our grand opening game in May. And so these are some of the games that they're actually playing. I love it because they were pretty confident. Their big rival was Frankenmuth. Why does it always seem like the big rival is always Frankenmuth? It just always does. And they were really hoping to win. So they actually, I love it. In a lot of the newspaper articles, it talks about them either taking like the interurban or a train or even a bus. To someone. When they went to play in Freeland, you had to be on the bus. And in the ads, we're so lucky. We have emailing, we have texting, we have phone calls. They put ads in the newspaper. So-and-so and so-and-so are supposed to report to the bus at this time to go play the game in Freeland. It's just awesome. It's really hilarious to watch these. It's like, okay, oh man, I missed that one, so I missed the bus. And sometimes they would go along, but they were going. They were not playing just local games. And I think that that's one of the things that's really, really interesting, is that these teams, suddenly in 1912, we had gone from these, okay, let's play a game, to they're going to Frankenmuth for an opening game. They actually easily were victorious against a team that they defeated. So they actually were playing preseason games to get ready for the season. That was, again, something new. That was something that I have to believe that William Collins initiated, that he wanted the team to get lots of experience, lots of practice, and so he was having some preseason games. They went to Frankenmuth. Let's just say they didn't win. But they did play in Freeland, and so they were starting to have, they did have a good game in Freeland. They did beat Freeland. They were also going out to places like Paynes. Paynes, if for those of you that are not familiar with, is over in Thomas Township. So like I said, this wasn't just a city league. They were actually traveling to different places. And I also think that this is really interesting. This other article from 1912 is really interesting because it's the first time that you really realize, if you look at some of the pictures, and we'll look at some here in a second, is that they do reference a colored team. That there was a colored team that they had formed. So the team that he was actually playing was mixed. This wasn't a segregated system at this point in time. We think of that so often, that there was all these segregated teams. It was whoever could put a team together. And so the team that actually William Collins was actually coaching was actually a mixed team. But they did play a team that was all, as they refer to it as a colored team. But at this time, there wasn't that. It just happened to be that that's the team that they put together. Again, the team is going out to different places. They're even going out to Indiantown. And I love this. Some of these places where they want games. This is what, it's like they're looking for games. They're doing really well. They are really battling. I said, I would have liked to have been around to go and watch these games going on. They're battling really well. They're looking for games. And again, if you want to get in touch with them, you need to contact William Collins as the manager. And in fact, one of the new teams, this was a new team. And again, one of the things that this donation opened up was this whole world of, I'm not even sure what league this is at this point. It's evolving at this time. This definitely was a a baseball time that he was part of an evolution that was happening, and he was kind of a driving force behind it because he's managing this. It's no longer this ragtag team. They're having practices. They're calling out other teams, and they actually get called out, and they're winning. The system under him is winning. They're winning a lot of games. And one of the things that they're looking at doing is that they actually get called out by this new team, and so they're supposed to be playing him. But then something happens, because we know they never made that game. Not really sure what happened. Something happens, and they don't make the game. And but they're still getting called out. They're still kind of the team to beat. Because Birch Run is now challenging them. That's at the beginning of August. But it's not until the end of August that we're seeing that it's reorganized and strengthened. Something happens. Something happens at the end of July, beginning of August. Not really sure what's going on, but they're putting together a much better team. Again, William Collins, see how it's spelled this time? They're putting together a stronger team. And he's looking, and again, now he's looking for teams to play. So we're not really sure. Those are still some of those puzzle pieces that we're kind of missing, that we're not really sure what happens. So the season in 1912 ends. We get into 1913. And in 1913, I refer to that as the rebuilding year. There was only 2 articles listed. One of them was from this May article. And again, we know that Collins is from this. We know that he is associated with the team at this point because he's addressing the fact that they played this game and they should not have played it. And the reason why they said that they should not have played it was because he did not even have all the number of players that he needed to play. For whatever reason, he just didn't. But the players on his team actually voted to play the game. And so against his best wishes, they did, and they lost. So that was 1913 seems to be a rebuilding year. But then we got the 1914 team. And the 1914 team was pretty cool. And I had to put like I said, my tiger came alive. So I had to include him in there. They were practicing, and they were coming out, and they were already into June, July, they are considered one of the fastest amateur teams around. And again, we know that Collins is associated with this team, and they are coming out. They have been practicing hard under his direction and guidance to make a better baseball team. And now we're starting to see where it's called the independent ball team. And they're really winning a lot. They're winning against a lot of different teams. And he is looking for games outside the city. He is purposely asking for games outside the city. He wants to challenge other teams. He feels that he has a good enough team. He has been prepping his team, and he wants to challenge ones outside. He also calls for a meeting in August, and not really sure what happens in there, but they go on to win the title. So I'm sure that this was kind of like the halftime speech, and they're like going, okay, guys, it's August, and we want to win the championships. And sure enough, they actually win that. And this is when the first time that we're actually starting to see, again, this whole league is starting to develop into an actual organized league, and it's becoming the City Independent League, is what they're actually starting to call it. So 1915, they're roaring even farther. They're going through. And again, they are starting to be the team to beat. But it's still very much a backyard team. You know, they're local team. They're playing at the local one. People are coming to see them. But they're winning, and they're excited. And I love this. So this, I don't know how many of you can see the back, but I said, I'm going to read part of this. I said, so in this game, and this is a game from September. So they've been playing all season long, but it shows how good they are. The Saginaw All-Stars, a newly organized team of some of the best baseball players in the city, will meet the Saginaw Tigers. So they had to create this new game, or this new team, to beat Cullins's guys. He had that team so well prepared that they needed to schedule their all-stars. So they were pulling together all these people from different areas so that they could actually have a pretty good match. One of the things I didn't mention was that they were actually playing on fields in Hoyt Park. It was funny because some things never change. One of the things that it mentions, for those of you who've ever played ball or gone into Hoyt Park in the spring when it's gotten like nice and wet down there, it talks about how that they were like 2 months before they were actually able to play on their field in Hoyt Park, and they were actually playing in any field that they possibly could play in. Back in 1913 or 1912, because it had rained so much. They had such a wet spring that they weren't able to find it. But they're still playing in Hoyt Park. They usually played on Sundays, and they were traveling to different places. But like I said, they were roaring, and this is the photo of the 1915 championship. And right here is their manager, William Cullins. So that is their team. It's a wonderful photograph. Not only is it dated, tells us where it was from, but it also identifies all the players on the team. And we even have an umpire. There was a reference to the Saginaw Tigers when they played, and it was on more than one occasion. It wasn't just with the Saginaw Tigers. Clearly says that the reason why I was lost was because of the umpires. It clearly said that in there. I'm like going, it was a bad call on the umpires, and they did it. The reporter is actually saying that, not even the team saying that. It's the reporter who's actually saying that. So it's really funny. But the umpires sometimes would travel with, it's mentioning when they would go out of town, there would be umpires that would travel with them. So this is a great picture of the team that we have, and that is one of the photographs that came with this collection. Now we get to 1916, and I think this is really telling, is that this is at the beginning of the season. City champions are again in the field. This is a photograph. It's a big photograph in the newspaper. This was a major story in 1916. And it has all of them listed. Again, Collins is spelled with an interesting spelling. But we know he's right here in the picture. And so we know again that he is part of this team. And what's really exciting about this is that, like I said, it is a major newspaper article. Suddenly, we've gone from, okay, it's the little local team and we're going to go root our neighbors on and everything, to, hey, wait, this is a pretty good team, and wait, they're going to be traveling all over the place. And they actually get permission to play at what they called Opportunity Park. And does anybody know where Opportunity Park was? Okay, so Opportunity Park was actually located just over what is now the Johnson Street Bridge. Well, it was there too, over the Johnson Street Bridge. It was actually in the area of Davenport and what was then Mary Street, but just over the Johnson Street Bridge, there was a park there. And at one point, some people maybe are familiar with it as Burkhart Park, but it was actually Opportunity Park at this time. And that was where a semi-professional baseball team called the Saginaw Ducks was actually playing at the same time. And so they got permission to play there. So no longer are they playing. I mean, Collins has taken his crew from just, okay, a Sunday afternoon baseball team that, yeah, we travel and we do a few fun things, to now suddenly we're actually playing in a stadium. A local stadium here in Saginaw. And so we're actually looking around to find some other players to play. And in reference again, 1916, we have a reputation. The Saginaw Tigers have a reputation. They are again known as the team to beat. And they had several exhibition games. They had some tournament games. And based on the fact that there's lots of different uniforms depicted in this one, and again, Collins is right here in the picture, that it was probably one of those tournament games that they actually had here. We don't know that much about this particular picture, but it was probably from about the same time period. But the Saginaw, the 1916 game was wonderful. This, as you can see, the Tigers were in demand. They will play at Hoyt Park. I said, fans are given an opportunity to see. They're talking about all the fans that are coming. So this is very much the Saginaw Tigers. If you want to think of something in terms of today, it would be like going to watch the Loons play. The Saginaw Tigers were that popular. They were probably more popular than the Saginaw Ducks that were playing at that time because they were doing so well and everybody wanted to come. And so you're seeing them. We'll soon begin a series on Sunday at Opportunity Park. And then they get on into the late season, and again, the league is changing. You can see how it's gone from, okay, it's the city championship, but now they're talking about that they're actually playing, again, Frankenmuth, for the title. And actually, Morris' team at this point is, they've already beat Frankenmuth at this point in time. So they're going for the county title. And then they're actually playing a Bay City team for the Saginaw Valley title. So now it's not just, okay, they have city recognition, they have county recognition, as well as the Saginaw Valley. I love this. I said this is one of those puzzle pieces that I definitely have to go and do a little bit more research on. But one of the things that they did was, again, Frankenmuth is a little upset that they lost. And one of the things that they want to do is they actually want to play them again. And they said, okay, we'll play them again. And they said that they're going to put a $50 bet on this particular game. And I'm like going, wait a minute, they're actually putting this, I thought those were under the table thing. Nope, they're actually putting it in the ad this day. Unfortunately, I do not know who won this matchup. They didn't tell me that. I was like looking in the newspaper. I'm like, wait a minute, I have to know who won, but we don't know. But also the other one that got upset was, they're like, wait a minute, we want the title. So there's still a city title, there's a county title, and there's also the Saginaw Valley title. And some of these other guys goes, wait, I want to challenge it because our record is really good too, so we want to come back. But the team that they all want to play is they want to play that Saginaw Tigers. They want to play William Collins' team. He coached an amazing team, and they wanted to play him. And so they do. We get to 1917, and we see no more record mention of William Collins directly related to the team. So we don't know if he stayed with the team. We know that the 1917 season, so not only was it back-to-back wins, but they did 3 championships in a year. So they did 1914, 1915, and 1916. And they almost did a 4th one in 1917. Came down to the final game. It was a series very much like the World Series today. They actually played several games, not just one to determine the championship, but they did lose in 1917. But one of the things that I thought, again, I think that's one of the things that's really telling is we don't necessarily see reference to this was a black team or this was a white team. We don't see that. It was people that were playing the game for the love of the game, except for specific references like the team that was an all-black team. You see that reference. You also see the special championship, kind of like couple exhibition games, and in there again, this championship pitcher, colored pitcher, as they referred to him, and one of the best twirlers. I loved how they referred to him as twirlers. I think that's just awesome that they've referred to him as twirlers, that they're coming and they're playing against the Saginaw Tigers. I'm going, that's just really cool. I mean, local talent, that they're bringing these guys that are semi-pro professionals are coming to play against the Saginaw Tigers here in Saginaw. And as I said, in 1918, we see the name change. We still have Saginaw Tigers. Saginaw Tigers will, as a name, for a baseball team, will reappear in the 1920s. But in 1918, there's a switch. It's no longer seems to be necessarily a part of what is referred to as the Saginaw Independent League. Suddenly we're part of Jaycox, which for those of you that may or may not know what Jaycox is, but it originally was a manufacturing company called Jackson Church and Wilcox, and they shortened it to Jaycox. Eventually became part of what we refer to as Steering Gear and General Motors. So suddenly we have Jaycox players. The team is now going to be called Jaycox. And ironically, prior to this, in the city directories, William Collins is listed as a chauffeur. That is what his occupation is. In 1921 city directory, he actually says that he is a chauffeur, and the place that he is a chauffeur for is actually somebody in Jaycox. So it seems like going forward, his career with baseball and managing baseball teams is tied into the places where he is actually working. But again, I have no reference to whether or not he was actually still playing, involved with the team. And it's also in 1920 that we also start seeing that the term of the Saginaw Industrial League. Prior to this, there was a Saginaw Industrial League. It was mostly listed as a bowling tournament league. And so there talks about lots of games and things like that. They also had an indoor baseball, Saginaw Industrial League baseball team that would play during the winter months at the YMCA. I'm not sure how many windows that broke, but they did apparently play inside. And then at the end of 1929, again, it's one of those things where it's a few references where they're making a point of saying that there is a colored team being organized within the Saginaw Industrial League. But prior to this, there wasn't a separation. If you wanted to play on a team for one of the factories and you were good, you played on one of the teams for our factories. But this particular team at Saginaw Gridiron was actually going to be an all-colored team. As we work through the 1930s, the next time that we really pick up William Collins again is again managing. He is now in the early 30s. He is the superintendent for the Commodore Apartments. By this particular time, he is working as a janitor for Saginaw Stamping and Tool Company here in the area. And obviously, he's coaching the baseball team. And again, I really think that it's testament to his coaching and his commitment and his ability to motivate his players. Because this is an article from July. Saginaw Stamping and Tools is right there, but they're in 4th place. They're not even on the radar for contending for the championship. But guess what? They do. Somehow, he gets his team, he motivates his team to win, and they come back, and they are a surprise, stunning team win in the 1936. In the Saginaw Industrial League is the Stamping Tool and Die Company. Now, and this team is actually remembered 40-some years later, actually almost 40 years later, they are remembered in an article that ran in the Saginaw News. Do you remember? And this is a team photo, but we actually have an original part of this one from the collection. And again, it says the Industrial League champions for 1936. And you can see William Collins standing right there. This picture also came from it. So after the season, the Athletic Association banquet for the Stamping Tool Company was held on February 19th. So almost a little over, not quite 100 years later. And does anybody notice anything on the table besides silverware and lots of dishes and food? Yep, right here is this trophy. And it listed as the Industrial League champions for 1936. And one of the really cool things, an Industrial League, right? Doesn't that kind of look like a nice little tire? And it's actually stamped, and it says General Tires. So yeah, so they were taking the whole industrial league thing to a whole new level. But again, that's part of the story, and to be able to actually show it in a picture again adds so much more to what we can tell about these different artifacts, and as well as his legacy here in Saginaw. Again, going back to kind of like how teams were talked about, there was a program, there was a tournament, it was from the Saginaw Softball Federation in 1939. And at first, and and one of the things is I said, there's levels. At this point, there are, more of racism and stuff like that is starting to rear its head in this area. And when I first read this, it wasn't registering. The first one didn't register, but by the time I read the second one, I'm like, oh, wait, I got to go back through that. I think it's really interesting that there wasn't the segregation teams. It didn't matter what color your skin was, you could play on the team, but there was still an element. And they use phrases like a colorful one or another colorful team. And I really feel like that's kind of unfortunate that they felt like they needed to include that in that instead of just talking about the players and talking about the pictures. But this is the late 1930s. Things are changing, and those kinds of little comments, it's subtle, but it's still there coming in. But they're still playing. They're playing in tournaments. They're playing on mixed teams. And so that's still happening. This true division has not happened. But there's still those little subtle things that are going into the phrasing on those kinds of things. And it wasn't just about winning for William Collins. This article talks about an exhibition game that several of the local teams were actually playing. And if you'll see a lot of list of people down here. And William Collins is actually one of them, which, by the way, they spelled his name exactly right on that one. And I was really super happy about that. But he talks about there was a player that got seriously injured during one of the games. And so they were actually having some benefit ones that they were actually doing at this point to raise money for hospital bills and stuff. We think of hospital insurance and stuff like this, but he wasn't able to work. He was a young man. And so they were hoping to get him some financial relief to help him get through until he was recovered. And then, last but not least, we have the infamous jacket. And I love this picture because he is actually wearing that jacket in this picture. And so my guess is it was probably one of his last championships. We're not really sure if he went on, but at this point he is actually working he's again a custodian janitor. He is working for the Saginaw Products Corporation, but in particular he is coaching their baseball team. I have to think that I'm wondering, how much recruiting of him was going on. Come and work at our plant so we can recruit you for our manager. I have to think that there might have been some of that going on with him because he was so successful and well respected in this area. And so he went on to this team. He took this team to the 1944 Saginaw City Championship. And the last picture is a full picture of his. And one of the things I started looking at these pictures, and the words that kept coming to mind, if I would have had to describe him, were dignity, dedication, and determination. And it was very obvious, especially when I was looking at the 1912 team and how something they were doing really well, and then something just horribly fell apart. And he could have walked away, but he didn't. And he rebuilt that team in 1913, but then he took them to new heights. And he was respected enough, as I said, upon his death. They ran an article about it. They usually do that for people, for people that are really have made an impact. And so it was very obvious that he had made an impact in this community. And he was dedicated to baseball. That was where his heart was. He loved baseball. And he was determined to make sure that whatever team he was coaching with succeeded to the best of their abilities. And he worked to make that happen. I also like looking for fun little family things in these kinds of things. And one of the fun things is, can anybody see something fun in this picture? His daughter left an imprint on this picture. And I've been looking at it a lot closer. So she actually wrote Daddy right there on the picture. And I thought, wow, that kind of says it all. But, it shows how the type of person he was, and the impact. And actually reading his daughter's obituary, which, Marilyn, it was your mom. And it was fun. It was like a whole page. And it mentions him and his wife. And she was an only child, and the incredible story. And you know that those people, they had it, the reason why they got to where they were, and the reason why we have an honorable judge is because of her, and that legacy flows through here. Was men like him. He was dedicated, like I said, dedicated, determined, and there was dignity. So thank you for letting me share your family story. We hope to continue to learn more, and like I said, these have a ripple effect. These stories have a ripple effect. We will learn more about the Saginaw Tigers. We will learn more about the Saginaw Industrial League. We will learn more about the baseball parks where they played and the other teams. So we'll continue to learn more. We'll continue to look for those puzzle pieces, and as we get more artifacts, hopefully they will help fill in some more spots. Thank you all for being here. Are there any questions? Leo? Sure.
Saginaw's first black doctor was Dr. Charles Ellis. I got a picture of Dr. Ellis was the manager for the doctor's baseball game.
Cool.
It's amazing. I don't know the year, but Dr. Ellis died in 1908. So I got a feeling Dr. Ellis knew Mrs. Ellis at that time.
Probably. He would have come to Saginaw. From what we can tell, he would have come to Saginaw about that time. So he might have been borderline that time. So that would be cool if they knew each other. Yes. Oh, please do. Please do.
You know more about my grandfather than I do. It's been a real learning experience.
Oh.
You did an excellent job.
Oh, thank you.
From these few things that I gave you, you've got the whole history. But I didn't know him because I was born in 46 and he died in 46, and it's probably, we missed each other by months. But I probably learned about him through my mother because the story goes she's just like him. And so when you talk about dignity, dedication, and determination, I do know one thing. My mother, when she was very young, came down with tuberculosis. She was in the big thing that they used to put people, all of that. And I think for 2 years she had undergone a treatment in that.
Mm-hmm.
And she was she missed her first graduation because she was ill. The second year, and she was studying, I guess the teachers or somebody was tutoring her while she was ill. But the second year, he said, "You are going to walk across that stage no matter what. Whether you're sick or well, you're going to walk across that stage. He made her get out of her sick bed and go to Saginaw High School graduation. And that is the dedication, the dignity, and the determination. And she graduated with her class, and she probably had to go back in the tube after she was done. But the strength of this man, the strength of this man was passed on to her, and it was passed on to me. So I appreciate this. I appreciate the story and all of everything that you did to bring this man to life. It's touching my soul. It's very, very, very heartwarming. And I really appreciate it.
Oh, I was going to say. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, I'm so glad. Wow.
And the significance is you're talking about an African American he was half Cherokee and half African American, and you're talking about back in those days when the larger society trusted him with one of their most favorite pastimes,
Yep.
baseball to lead
Yep.
their team, and he led them to victory. I had no idea when I passed these things. I said, what am I going to, I'm looking at these boxes in my basement. I said, I got this is hanging in the closet, and what can I do with this? And I thought, let me just give it to the Saginaw Museum. And I'm so glad I did. And
So
I love the picture where this is actually in the picture on
The table.
So thank you, everybody, for listening and for coming. And thank you, Sandy. This is wonderful. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so this was a wonderful example for all of us as well as to the work that Sandy does and the work that the whole historical team here does together in order to not just preserve an item, but to figure out its context and how we tell the story. So this is a slice of the work that we are privileged and honored to be able to do for the community. With that, though, we are out of time today. I'm sure if you still have a couple questions or want a closer look, that Sandy can help you do that.
You bet.
So thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.